Hi everyone, my name is Liz, your Money Mentor Online, and thank you so much for coming back to my YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about Black history and Black finances. It's that time in the UK where it's important that we all reflect on our history as people of color or Black people, but we also want to talk about how that affected our finances. So let's go back in time, 400 years of slavery, and what did that mean? That meant, unfortunately, that Black people were put on the back foot. How? Well, let's look at this video.
If I right now decided that I wanted to play Monopoly with you, and for 400 rounds of playing Monopoly, I didn't allow you to have any money, I didn't allow you to have anything on the board, I didn't allow for you to have anything.
Okay, so the video kind of explains how being in slavery, not being paid for 400 years, put people on the back foot financially because their peers who weren't Black were actually generating wealth where we didn't have the opportunity to do so. So that is our past. And I think it's very important that we understand that before we look at our present. So what is our present? Well, only 30% of Black people in the UK own their own homes. Compared to 60% of white and Asian people who own their own homes, that is a very low number. Now, what does that mean? It means that 48% of people who are Black in the UK live in social housing. So it's an interesting situation to look at our past and how it has affected our present. But, ladies and gentlemen, what I think is important is how we choose to operate in the future. What are we going to do to change these statistics so that we can actually be in a better financial place as people who are Black? So, what's important to me? Let's talk about our future. So, all of us are migrants in this country. We may be 4th, 5th, 6th generational migrants, but we are migrants. My parents came here when I was a baby, for example, so that shows me that I am a 2nd generation migrant. However, even if you aren't just 2nd generation, you might be 3rd, like my children, you might be 4th or 5th. It really doesn't matter. The point that I want to make is that migration is expensive. Okay, so that's something to look at, and we need to understand that how it affects us today. So if you haven't lived here or your family hasn't lived here for years and years, and you've just migrated here, you and I, who have been here for a minute, might be blown away to understand the cost of migration, the cost of renewing your visa in this country, the cost of extending your stay, the cost of citizenship is actually astronomical, and that is something that actually again challenges our finances today if you are a migrant. However, I always, like I said, want to look into the future. How can we change this? The first thing we need to be able to do is begin to educate ourselves and our children financially. So financial literacy is not a joke, ladies and gentlemen. This is something that can change the trajectory of our generations to come if we take the time to do it now. How do we start? Let's start by reading something as simple as Rich Dad, Poor Dad that shows different ways in which you can earn income, the different ways in which we are taxed. This is information that we need to have, because if we look at what's called the cash flow quadrant, I'll put it up here, it shows you that you could either be self-employed, you could be employed, you could be a business owner or an investor. Those are 4 different ways in which you make money and 4 different ways in which you are taxed. If we have that education and we take the time to pass that information on to our children, guess what? They are 1 step higher on the rung of education when it comes to financial literacy. So the next thing we need to do once we've educated ourselves and our children is to ensure that we leave our children in a better place financially than we find ourselves today. How do we do that? Well, apart from educating them, we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to take steps that we may not have taken. For example, if you didn't go to university, maybe encourage your child to go to university. If you can't do university, community college is still a path to education to ensure that they can have a trade on the E side of the quadrant. Okay, but also we want to see if they have a side hustle, which might put them on the S side of the quadrant, or maybe one day they might be able to invest in opportunities like stocks or shares that would actually put them on the I side of the quadrant. Ladies and gentlemen, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say we want to leave our children as Black people in a better place than we found ourselves when we came to this country, so that they don't remain behind on that back foot that I keep referring to. I talked about the fact that 48% of people who are Black live in social housing. How can we change that in the future? Well, the first thing I did was to buy my property. I lived in a flat and I bought that flat, and it really changed the trajectory of my life. Why? Because getting into home ownership is something that starts you on the level of growing wealth. We lived in that flat for a very long time and later on sold it, but I'll tell you what, there is something about home ownership that changes how you think about where you live. You want to improve it, you want to make it better, but you also understand that capital gains is on your side. So you live in that property, instead of paying rent, you're buying it now. It puts you in a situation where if you were to sell it 10 years from now, you enjoy that capital gains. You enjoy the fact that the value of your property has gone up. If you're renting for 10, 15, 20 years, unfortunately, your landlord is the only person who's going to enjoy that money or that increase in value. So buying your council property is a good idea. However, there are a few disadvantages of buying your council property, and I want to tell you what they are. If you're living in a flat, there is something known as major works. That is where, for example, the roof of the property needs to be changed, or the windows need to be changed, or there needs to be major rehabilitation to the stairwell or something like that, or to the lift. Now, you who own that property, because you chose to buy it, are going to be asked to pay for the work being done on that property. So major works is massive in terms of how it could affect your finances, because that is going to be added to the money that you pay to your council, be it for your lease or whatever. So just before you actually choose to buy a property, my number one thing would be contact your local council and find out if any major works are planned in the next 5 to 10 years. They should have that information, and they are obligated to share it with you under the Freedom of Information Act. Now, if you know that major works are going to happen, do not buy the property until they are completed. Okay? That's the only thing I would say to you. But also bear in mind that you're not just going to be paying your rent anymore, you're going to be paying your mortgage. You're responsible now for everything that goes wrong in that property that you live in. So it is a big step going into home ownership. But ladies and gentlemen, if you look at it in the long term, it's a smart step. So again, as we continue to look forward, we've talked about education. The other thing that I want to talk about is drive. And what I mean by drive is deciding to grow financially, pushing forward to grow financially, so that we are not where we are today, 10 years from now. Okay, so it's super important that we actually decide to make that decision to push forward, to grow our finances. And what we focus on grows. And that's my next point, focus. We want to focus on growing our finances, focus on teaching our children, focus on making sure that if we can, we leave some sort of an inheritance for our children. Now, that is not a simple thing, but it is a blessing. It's something that we need to be able to do if we choose to. I want to leave an inheritance for my children. I want to be able to say, I gave them a foot up in the world because I took care of my finances and I taught them how to do the same. So, my fellow brothers and sisters, my desire today, as we wrap up Black History Month this year, I want us all to take time and get better financially, get better with financial literacy, take it seriously, understand what it means. And while many of us are of that sandwich generation where we have to send money home, that's called the black tax, we have to send money home to our parents, and then we have to take care of our children. So we're kind of like in the middle, being squeezed financially. We have to set healthy boundaries to ensure that the black tax doesn't actually take everything away from us. It's not a bad thing to support your parents and your children. I feel like it's a blessing to be able to do that. However, setting those healthy boundaries is so important because it helps us to prepare, especially our children, for the next generation. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we wrap up Black History, I personally think it's a fantastic thing that we celebrate our history every single year. I think, though, we should celebrate it every day with financial literacy so that we can change the trajectory of our generation. That's all I have today. I really just wanted to hop on and say that as we wrap up the month. But thank you everyone for who watches my channel. Please share this with your friends and your family, and let's make a difference with the financial literacy that we have for the next generation. I ask only 3 things of you: like this video, subscribe, and share this particular video with someone. Make sure you hit that share button. Someone needs to hear this. Let's make sure that it goes around the world. All right, guys, thank you so much and have a fantastic day.